Awesome. So, welcome to our first recording for Athena Valley of the Sun. We're going to have so many more of these as we work with all of these women over the next, hopefully, many semesters. But you and I have always had such a special connection. So, I wanted you to be my first guest. So, thank you for agreeing to be here because you are just such a beautiful soul that I'm blessed to know. And so thank you. I just want to start with saying thank you for you being here. So for those of you listening in for the first time, Athena Valley of the Sun has a 10-week program. We partner in the Honors College at GCU, and we take women ages 18 to 24 through understanding themselves in a much deeper way. So we have 4 core values, and underneath those, they're enlightened by the principles of enlightened leadership, which is from a book by a lady named Martha Mayhood Mertz. It's called Becoming Athena. And we have taught this program for 5 semesters. And Ashley has taken 3 of the 5 semesters because she loves us so much. So I think that speaks to the magnitude of the self-work that happens within the Young Athena program. Okay, I just want to pitch it to you for a second and kind of talk to me about why you decided to take Young Athena multiple times, and just kind of talk me through like your Young Athena journey.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I was like thinking about this today and I was like, how do I even encapsulate this into one answer? Okay, so when I went into Young Athena, I was just kind of at this like crossroads in my life where I was like trying to set up. So I was a junior. So I was about to go into my senior year, about to go into life after college. And I was like, what is this? But I actually enrolled in Athena because I wanted to be the best leader that the Honors College had ever seen. And it was like this very competitive thing where I was like, if I do all the leadership programs, then I'd have to be good at it, right? And so I did Athena. And then the second day, it's the core values day. So it's like basically like it sets everything up for the rest of the 10 weeks. And it's very emotional because like how many times I think in our lives are we asked, what do you love? And what do you love? Not what does everyone around you love and what are you like? And I have a journal. I like keep a journal because I'm just very into journaling. And my journal entry from that day, I have it. And it says like, I had to take the Core Values workshop today, and I don't even know if I did it right because who am I when no one perceives me? And I was like, I don't know. And
Wow.
so, yeah, I was because like I'm a people pleaser, right? So who I am, or I don't know that I could say that anymore, but who I was so dependent on who was in the room with me and what they needed from me. So, like, flash forward to 10 weeks later, I'm like, okay, maybe I have an idea of who I am and what I like, but I just have so much more work to do around this. There's so much more to do. Also, I got so lucky to be in this cohort of like the, I mean, how many were in there? Like the 18 coolest women I think I've ever met in my life. I don't know. I'm still friends with at least 9 or 10 of them, like closely. Like we text weekly. Like we are so tight. And I just was like, okay, if this is one cohort, what happens at 2? And so I took a second one because I was like, it's magic. I don't know. Um, Learned to be a little bit more myself and made more friends. And then I was like, well, I mean, I have one more semester, might as well finish it strong. And so I took the third one. And I once again made more friends, learned even more about myself and about how other people work too. I think it's like we're so egocentric as humans, and just understanding how other people work is so important to understanding just like the world. And I just thought it was so magical. And it gave me an appreciation for just everything. Like the world is so much more beautiful when you look at it through the Athena core values and through the Athena lens of like women are like the coolest people ever, and you just get to like bask in it. Like I don't know what more you could ask for than that. Anyway, so I just got to hang out with the coolest facilitators and get to hang out with all these amazing women. And yeah, and it totally changed my life because every friend I have now, I either made an Athena or like Athena has strengthened my friendship with them in some way. And even like my family members, like everything, it kind of just changed my view of the world. It changed my brain chemistry. I don't know how, but I think it totally did. So I love it.
Yay! No, that's so exciting. That's so exciting. It's really powerful to kind of have watched your journey through the whole thing. So I would love you to talk about what your core values are, and how you've strengthened your relationship with them, because I think that's really important. I think a lot of people are aware that core values exist, but they're not aware of how impactful when you're actually living your life through the lens of your core values, of how that shows up. So talk to me a little about your values and like how you've been able to apply them in your life.
Yeah, so when I started Young Athena, you have to like create these binders and they're the window into your soul, right? And like, who am I when no one perceives me? What does my soul even look like? So I just put pictures of the people that I loved in there because I was like, oh, to know me is to know the people that I love. And I think that's interesting because that we did our first core values workshop and I was like, okay, my first one must be like relationships or something because obviously if you look at the front of my binder, it's just everyone I'm in relationship with. And then maybe the second one's like curiosity. I don't know. I like to ask questions. And maybe the third one, I don't even remember what the third one was, but it was super interesting. And then I like tried them on and I was like, I don't, I kept getting in conflicts with people because I just felt like they didn't. For example, I'm a huge LGBTQ advocate and I would get in arguments with people that would think like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Pronouns don't really matter. Pronouns don't whatever. And why do you care so much because I'm cisgender? And I was like, well, it matters because it matters to their experience. And it is essentially, it's just letting them be their authentic self and letting them be comfortable in their own skin. And that's like the least we can do as humans for each other. And I was like, I just feel like you just don't care. And I had this like aha moment where I was like, it's not relationships because I care so much about people that I'm not even in relationship with that I will get in arguments with people who I am in relationship with for them. And they don't even know me. And they
Right.
it's just not, I just care too much. And I always thought that that was such a negative thing, but like it's it's me. I care too much, and I just can't. That's just me. So my core values at this point in time, and I've tried them on, and after 3 cohorts, I feel like I've thought about this enough that they're pretty solid. It's care and curiosity and freedom. And freedom was kind of one that was kind of floating there, and I didn't really realize that it was even in the top 10, let alone my top three. But I get really, really upset when people box me or expect me to be this thing that I don't want to be, or that maybe it doesn't align with how I am. So, like, this freedom thing is so important. And when my freedom gets taken away, whether it be like somebody perceives me in a way that I don't really agree with, or they try to, I hate being bossed around, I can't do it. I get really desperate and really angry really quickly. So, it's important for me to have that freedom. And it just like through experience and through trying them all on, I just kind of came to that conclusion. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those are my
I love it because I think independence was on your list for a while, but freedom makes so much more sense, right? Like I can totally see that in your experience.
yeah,
So,
and I'm willing to depend on you, but you have to, it should be my choice. And I'm going to
right,
make that choice. So,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
freedom to choose whatever it is that you want to choose at the end of the day, right? Like whatever aligns with your soul, which is beautiful. Would you say that you weren't, I mean, you're openly talked about how you feel like you're a different person because of it, but do you think that your soul alignment, like mind, body, spirit, is more aligned than it ever has been, because of
Yeah.
kind of the work that you did in this program?
Well, yes. Like, even we were talking about this before we started recording, but I'm recently graduated. I'm looking for all these jobs. And I'm like, what do I want to do if it's not college? Because I love school and I love college. But because of the steps that I've been able to go through, I've been able to really kind of par down like what I want to do. So I'm like looking at jobs in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm looking for jobs in mentorship and in leadership because it's I get to care for people as a job, and like that's the dream. And then B, I get to be curious and I get to learn things and I get to ask questions that I might not get to ask in other positions. And then I have this financial freedom to maybe if I do want to go to do more school, I can go look at more school, or I can do something completely different. And I just have this freedom to align myself in whatever way works for me in the moment without really anything holding me back. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that a year and a half ago, I probably would have made the choice of least resistance because it would have just allowed me to do whatever everyone else needed for me at that point. But it's kind of helped me take back my own narrative and get to make choices that I like and not just choices I think the people around me will like or appreciate or something like that.
Yay! I love that. That's so exciting. It's definitely like being the leader of your life is super, super important, right? So
Mhm.
it's so interesting that how often we think we're leading when we're actually just like kind of in that people pleasing space. I'm a recovering people pleaser as well. It took me a long time to actually willingly step into my own authentic self. So that was another thing that I really struggled with for a long time because I, like you, was in the same boat of like, what do people need from me in the room and how can I accommodate them? It didn't actually come from an authentic space of me wanting to provide because that's how what I felt called to do, right? There's a difference when you're feeling called to lead people or you're being like obligated to lead people, right? That's a completely different energetic experience. And so I love that you're now like leaning into your, what did you call it earlier? Like now you like go with your gut.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
it knows what it wants. It knows what's best. So
for sure, your intuition as a woman is literally the most powerful superpower that you carry. And it's wild to me how many women get in that and they're like, oh, yeah, I thought that might be the case, but I just didn't do it. And then also, the path of least resistance is rarely the one that's most inspiring, right? But you're so right. There's so many of us that fall into that. Like, it's just the crutch that's there. And I'm just going to lean on it because it's here without really evaluating, like, do I need this? Do I not need this? Do I even want it? Does it sound good? Like, we don't even actually go through that level of analysis. But yeah, one of the things we talked about in Young Athena is just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And so it's
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah. So that's really
yeah,
beautiful. So, from a
yeah,
leadership
and
perspective, because Young Athena is a leadership program, but because it's a
yes.
leadership program that's so heavily rooted in who you are, um, what just kind of talk to me for a minute about like how you feel like it changed your leadership as well, because now we know like it changed you from a human perspective and how you process and like you said your brain chemistry, but also talk to me about how you think it advanced you in your leadership skills.
Yes. So I've always loved leadership because to me, so I'm an oldest sister. So like my whole life is leadership. Like I have two little sisters, so I just like love dearly. Anyway, so I went to college and like any leadership opportunity I had the chance to be a part of, I just gravitated towards because I really do love it and I have a passion for it. So when I went through Athena the first time, I was the vice president of program development for the Honors College. So I ran a 250-person mentorship group, and that's kind of what I was in charge of. And I was in charge of the team that helped execute that. So um, my leadership, I felt like I had to know the most in the room, and I had to have all the answers, and I had to know exactly what to do at all times in order to be a good leader. And that it was this very like masculine idea of what leadership is like tough and like just get things done, and there's not really a ton of room for really anything else. Which there is definitely a place for that, but that's just not how I lead. And so going through Young Athena, these core values like collaboration or knowing yourself and being authentic and collaborating with others kind of taught me that what I really had to focus on was that I have this unique leadership style that's innate to me, and I can actually use that to be more effective because people love authenticity so much more than they love progress. And typically, authenticity and progress can go hand in hand, but it's kind of, we're not really taught that. We're taught that, like, there's a certain way to do things in order to get things done, or there's a certain thing you have to be a good leader. And that's kind of, Athena kind of just tears down those expectations and those stereotypes and just kind of lets you be. So, my senior year, I was the Honors College Student Body President, and I had a team of 40 that served the 3,000 person Honors College at GCU. And instead of leading with, like, oh, I actually know everything about the Honors College, I just kind of led with the fact that I was just there to love them and to help them grow and to be there for them and help them grow in their leadership. And then they could kind of a trickle down effect where if I serve them really well, then they can serve their people really well. And I didn't know all the answers, to be honest. There was a couple of things that came up where I was like, I have not one clue, but you know what? I'll sit down with you and think about it and we can research it. And I think that the relationships and the mentorship I was able to create just by caring and just by kind of appealing to this need of like, let me see you as human and let's help each other as humans because as much as I helped them, they helped me even immensely more. And it was just so inspiring and it was just so incredible to just kind of get to bask in the awe of, once again, like personhood and just the amazing humanity and the amazing humans that we're surrounded with, but then also to get to care for them. And like I helped a couple get internships and I helped a couple get student worker jobs, and like they still text me about how they're doing. And like to me, that is so much more worthwhile than any kind of progress I could have made if I was maybe a little bit more outcome oriented than relationship oriented. So that's kind of the opposite person.
Yes. I love that so much. I know one of the questions that I had on here was talk to me about a person you mentored and how you helped that individual become a leader, but I think you already answered that. So you had a team of 40 that you
40.
supported?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And
Yes.
those are all volunteer positions, right? Or are they some of
Mm-hmm.
them paid student positions?
I think like 4 or 5 of them were paid, and then the rest, like the other 35, were volunteer. So,
Wow, that's powerful because even leading a team that gets paid is one thing, right? But leading a team of especially college students who aren't necessarily getting paid for the work that they're contributing, that's huge because that's a, like an escalated level of motivation. Money, that frequency of money has, some appeal to people. But when you can actually lead 40 people and through their experience of being a volunteer worker. That's even better. But I think the Honors College does a really, really beautiful job of that, of creating community. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I was lucky. Yeah, I was so lucky. Like the honors college, like they taught me how to care and lead at the same time. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether it was Young Athena or just their own leadership, like I think you say it. You don't become yourself by yourself, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
it was because I had amazing women mentors who also went through Young Athena that I was able to, they like just poured into me so much, and that allowed me to pour into my people. And I don't know, I just think it's so beautiful. So shout out to GC Honors. They're the coolest.
Yeah.
But
I
also,
love them so
guys,
much. Yeah.
yeah.
I know. I don't think Young Athena would be where it is without the our partnership in the GCU Honors College, like for real. Dr. Bree has done so much to just bring light to a program that was very like dormant for a while. Like it was small. I was a keynote speaker at a symposium a couple of years ago, but after COVID, we really struggled bringing it back forward. And Dr. Bree was kind of the key that was like, no, this is a thing, and we're gonna do it. And then now here we are, 5 semesters later, and over 130 girls graduated, and it's like, isn't that so amazing? It's so amazing. I literally wake up every day and I'm like, is this my job? I get to hang out with all
Yeah.
these beautiful women and I get to mentor you all into like your next career, whatever that is, and like just hold space for you to be you. And if you need to be messy or you need to be bright or you need advice, like whatever that is. And so it's so
Yeah.
funny. It's just, I think I always come back to like how just you just said it. Like you were inspired by your workers, right? They teach you just as much as you feel like you were contributing or teaching them. That's exactly my experience with Young Athena is I learn as much from you all as I feel like I give. And so it's just this beautiful reciprocating energetic exchange that is so masterful, so masterful. So,
Yeah. And it's so cool. I think being a part of 3 different cohorts, like you get 3 totally different vibes. And each one had girls that I learned so much from. Like we had a student named Megan in our first one, and it was like day 2. And like I was still like defrosting, like my little authenticity. I was like, I don't really trust these people yet. And she was super vulnerable and like told us the backstory behind one of her values and like cried. And I was sitting there in like my totally disembodied state being like, why are we crying? Like, no, this is not leadership and this is not what I'm here for. But like her authenticity inspired other people in the cohort's authenticity, which then inspired my own authenticity. And it was like this crazy ripple effect where by the end I was like, actually, this is how I feel. And I might cry about it. And that's actually okay because it's magical. And like, it's so beautiful. And then in the second cohort, they were so serious. They were like so serious, so like brainy and thoughtful. And I just listening to it, I was like, oh, that's, I never would have thought about it that way. That's incredible. And then the third one, like there was so many questions that were brought to the table that were like expounded upon. Like we talk about building relationships, and that relationships are like stairs. And on your first stair, you're more acquaintances. Your second stair are your like friends, but not close friends yet. And then your third stairs are like your inner circle, your ride or dies. And people were talking about like how you would do that with family. Like if your family was maybe on a first step, how do you like move them to a third? Or if their family was on a third step and maybe that was a little too close, like is it even okay to escort them down the stairs? Like how does that work? And I love my parents, so it wasn't exact. Well, and they did too. It's not a really question of love, but while I didn't relate to it, it made me totally think of relationships in this different way, where we have the autonomy to move them wherever we want, wherever they serve us, and it's not being mean, and it's not being callous. It's just protecting us and living in our authentic self, whether and how that serves us. So I just think it's, I mean, I did it 3 times because I learned something crazy new every time. And it was so, the experiences were so different. You can't really, same values, same lessons, totally different experience. So, but all
Yeah.
beautiful.
So good.
So,
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the program dynamic too of you had small groups, right? And so then your small group energy changes too. So your cohort energy changes, your small group energy changes also. And so it's like even though the curriculum was the same because you are always hearing through different people's lenses, it's like it just keeps growing and growing and growing, right? And then understanding other people's positions or perceptions, whatever that looks like, it always gives us a different, it's like a more, I'll say a fuller version, right, of that
yes.
experience. So building relationships, I might have this tiny little pee hole that I look through building relationships through. But then when I hear it from you and I hear it from some other girls and I hear it from the small group and I hear it from my group leader, it's like all of a sudden my lens of build relationships becomes this like giant circle that I'm looking through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more full of life and love and caring, right? It's so powerful.
Yes. It's beautiful. And
You're
there
like,
was so many
yes.
times in our, yeah, I mean, I like, it probably sounds so corny and it probably sounds like I was paid to say this, but like, I love Athena and I'm not somebody who just says things to say things. Like, I'm just obsessed with Athena. I don't know. I did it 3 times. So,
Right. No, yeah, that proves that's 30 weeks of Athena. This is when you think about it that
that was
way.
just, they had to earn me. I almost quit the second day because everyone was crying and I didn't know what to do about that. But I toughed it out and it was beautiful and I'm better for it. So,
Ugh,
yeah.
that's so cool. Yeah, we heard that from a lot of people. Remember at our graduation speeches where everyone was like, um, yeah, like I didn't even know what I signed up for and like I'm super glad I did. And I just love that feedback so much because it's like you may not have known what you signed up for, but then like Young Athena is one of the only classes at school where I'm just going to have you learn about yourself, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no
And
class in college where you're like, hey, let's figure out what you like and let's figure out
right.
what your circle looks like and let's figure out you and let's crack the code of you.
Yeah. And I'm a psychology major. So if they had one of those, I would have taken it. But there's nothing quite like it. So,
Yeah, I love that. Talk to me. Did Young Athena reframe your relationship with social media? Or did you
yes,
already
it
have a
did.
pretty healthy one? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Well, I've never really been super into social media because I've always felt, I feel like maybe especially as women, there's this pressure to compare ourselves to other women, especially when it comes to pictures or when it comes to success, because there's this very, what's the opposite of abundance mindset? It's the, oh,
Lack.
scarcity mindset,
Yeah, scarcity or lack.
where
Yeah.
um, there's only so much success that there is, and we can't all share it, and there's so we all have to compete with one another. And I think that feels very much that way in leadership too. And like I was a sports psychology major, so there's not a lot of girls in there too. So it feels like you have to work twice as hard for half the credit, but then also that there's not a lot of room for women at the top. And so you have to be the best woman in the room, or you have to be whatever. But then going through Young Athena, it's weird because I think maybe for through the first or the second cohort, I was like, wait a minute, nobody in here is competing, and we're all special, and we all are valuable, and we all have a seat at the table. And it's not this utopia idea, it's happening and it's here. And it can be like this everywhere. It's completely in our own power. And so now I go on to Instagram, and instead of looking ways to compare, I look at, oh my gosh, she's doing this thing that she's super passionate about. She loves fitness. And that's so cool. I hate fitness. You will not catch me running. But she's doing it and she's loving it and she's inspiring other people who would be inspired by that. And I think that's beautiful. Or, so this like comparison of like, I have to be bad for you to be good, or you have to be bad for me to be able to be good. It's just not a thing anymore, because we're all just operating in our own authentic selves. And it's okay that that's totally different, and that some people love it and some people don't. And you just have to find your own seat at the table that's going to value what you bring to it, and kind of be in alignment with that. So.
I love that. And you're so right, because society wants to pin us against each other, right? So then we buy the makeup and we buy the lipstick and we buy the expensive clothes because she has the expensive clothes, right? I mean, that's literally social media influence down to the T. And that's not to say that influencers don't have a place, but if I'm rooted in a position of comparison with an influencer, then I need to evaluate what's going on inside of me that's rooting me in comparison, right? Instead of
Yes.
celebration. Yeah.
Right. And I like with the core values, when you realize that you are what you value, there's so much confidence and security that comes into that. Like one day, like how your some journal prompts are like write a love letter to yourself. I was like, that's so stupid. I'm not doing that. But then one day I did. And I was like, you are so caring. And the way that that felt, I was like, oh, wait, I am what I value. I like I don't know if that makes sense. And then you bring that lens to the world, and other people are what they value, and you just look at it from this secure place of I am exactly what I love. And also they are incredible too, and they're so different. I don't know. It's just this security that totally counteracts this comparison, because there's no need. Everybody's just trying to like love their authentic self and be exactly what they value. And so there's just no use comparing it, because I'm not like you, and you have your own like absolute magic and your intuition and the way that you see people and the way that you bring this authenticity and this value to every conversation with every person you interact with. And I have my own magic too. Like I ask the best follow-up questions in the whole world, and I know that. But I didn't know that before Athena. And so I just think it's so beautiful.
Thank you. So good. Yeah, my core value is heart. Look at this cute thing. I haven't painted it yet, but I found it at the dollar store. And I was like, oh, I'm going to hang this in my office. It's going to go somewhere back there so we can see it. But yeah, you're like, that's where I feel like there's a level. I can't lead my life with my heart if I'm not being authentic. It's a
Mm-hmm.
true impossibility, because authenticity comes from your core. It's like who you are at your core. And so understanding that my core value is heart, and that I literally can't love you in who you are without being in my heart. Truly. I'm like crying over this. I'm a crier anyway. But like that to me was like, if I am going to love people, and I'm going to love on people, and I'm going to inspire people and inspire them to be the most true, authentic, loving versions of themselves, I have to be aligned with my heart in order to do that, or else I'm just going to be saying words and it's going to fall flat, right? So yeah, so I love that. And looking at your core values too, because heart and care look very similar. And I think they feel similar to people, even though our distinctions are probably very different and our executions are very different. So, so powerful to hear just all of this goodness, because I knew that when I was like, Ash, will you join this podcast with me? And you were like, yes. And I was like, wait a minute, this is real. And like, there's so many of like your energy around Young Athena in the world. And I'm like, but it's so different. Like you all had such different experiences, and hearing your perspectives is just, and getting to share your perspectives too, because there's so much of Young Athena that we promise we're keeping safe in our safe space, right? And so then it's like, what are you willing to share? And what about this experience is okay to talk about? because not everything that you experience in Young Athena you want to be aired, and that's completely fine. But that's the idea of the safe space. I do want to
Yeah,
talk about that for a minute. The safe space that's created in Young Athena, did that frame how you hold space for other people?
absolutely. I think part of what makes it a safe space is this deep respect that's shown to you from the get-go. Like there's no earning the respect it's given to you. And I don't know that there's a lot of places in this world where respect is just given and love is just given um, without a second thought. And I think that when you see facilitators do that and you feel that, it's really powerful. You can't help but also mirror that to the other people in the room. And so it does make it really safe because there's this innate value and this innate belonging and this innate community that you just are in because you're there and because you exist. And that there's this specialness in that. And I think that's something just so beautiful about Athena that I don't know that I've been able to find in other spaces. And so I'm able to bring that and kind of I do it in my own way, right? Like we're all so different. I found one of the things that I loved most about Athena was that like time was so freely given. Like if I had a question, it was answered fully and probably even more. And no matter how long it took, and no matter how many follow up questions I had, or no matter how many other people wanted to chime in on it, there was so much room for that. And so when I would meet with my mentees or with people that I led, I would clear a whole hour for them, and I would just sit there and I would just, even if they didn't use the whole hour, like it was there for them to ask as many follow up questions as they wanted, to ask whatever, even if it didn't relate. And I just thought that that was so beautiful about Luna, and it totally changed the way I show up in the world because the most valuable thing you guys gave me was your time and attention and love, no matter how long it took. And so I kind of want to mirror that to the rest of the people I interact with. It was very special and meaningful to me. So,
I love that too, because I don't think I ever thought about it through that lens. Let's go back to the you teaching me things.
well,
Um,
yeah, there was time after Young Athena, or there was one time in Young Athena I was asking about independence and how what is hyper independence and is there such thing and what does that look like? And you and Dr. Reader sat there and answered the question for 30 minutes and then you or not 30, that's probably it felt like 30 minutes to me because it felt like a full answer. And then you asked me a follow-up question and I answered and then you kind of talked a little bit more in depth about that and I just was like, oh my gosh, like they answered my question fully.
yeah.
And like I don't know, it was just beautiful. And I remember sitting there just being like, wow, they love me. And that's so silly because like to some people that probably isn't a huge deal, but it was a big deal to me.
Yeah. Well, and being in college, right? You only have so much time in a class. So there's so many times you ask questions and they're like, we'll get there, or we'll come back to that, or we'll, right? And so how many times do you leave class never feeling complete?
Right.
And that's the thing is what we talk about is so vulnerable that it's almost like we have to address it in the now, or you're going to leave with questions and doubts. And sometimes even when you're doing the self-learning, that feels like insecurity, right? And so that's always our goal is to bring you to completion. But I've never thought about it through the lens of being the student who, like, kind of gets shuffled off sometimes or doesn't get the answers, the complete answers. You get partial answers or mini answers. But yeah, holding that space is super important. And being a trauma informed yoga instructor, providing safe space for women to be able to be comfortable in their vulnerable, that's a muscle that we have to build over time because we are not taught that, right? It's like tighten your bootstraps and drive on, suck it up, buttercup. Like we've had all of these things that we've been told all our lives. And so to actually sit in a seat where it's like, I love you and I respect you and your vulnerability matters to me, and I'll hold space for whenever you're ready to let her out, right? And then that is where truly the magic happens because I can't move you into your greatest good until you have complete acceptance for who you are. And acceptance comes from, like, that vulnerability comes from having acceptance of who you are. So it's incredibly special to hear that we upheld our end of the bargain for you. And it wasn't
Oh,
even like we probably I don't even recall that conversation. And so it's funny to see like the how much that had an impact on you, but then just knowing that it was received in such a beautiful way is like, oh, like isn't
Yeah.
God wonderful?
And the power of silence too. Like there's so many times where like me or one of the other girls would have a hard time getting a sentence out, or maybe we'd cry when we were saying it, and there was this, we got time, like say what you need to say, be okay, like, and no matter how many choked sobs it took to get out, we waited, and it was beautiful. And I think like some of the most powerful things that you guys did for us was just sit and let us either think it out or let us get it out. And I just think it's so beautiful, and I'm so thankful, and I use that all the time. So
You hold space for people for when they're like getting upset?
yeah, like I have two little sisters, right? And the youngest one, she's a senior in high school, so I think there's just so much to figure out. And she'll be like, I just don't know how to silence silence for a little bit, and then she'll be like, okay, I've got it now. I'm like, okay, cool. What do you got? Or she'll be like, I just don't know how to phrase this, or I don't know. She'll just sit. There's so much silence, but just being willing to sit in the silence and just wait, whether something comes or not, is just so beautiful. I don't know. It's so there's no rushing. There's no rushing in Athena. It just is.
Yay. I know. It's so good. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand why the not rushing is so important, right? Like, I think we're in a world where a lot of people are incredibly uncomfortable with emotions and big emotions, especially. And so, what we try to do is we try to fix the problem in order for people to move through it faster because your emotional experience, if I'm not good in my emotions, will create discomfort in me. And so now we're both sitting in discomfort. And if I don't know how to
Right?
manage my own discomfort, then I need to fix yours in order to not feel mine, right? Yeah. So that level of heightened awareness, too, just as an individual, is incredibly powerful because now you're no longer disrupted by other people's big emotions. And then you can
Yeah.
hold that space for them, right? Like, oh, you have big emotions right now. Like, I get those too. Like, let me just sit with you for a minute,
Seriously,
right?
they're like so beautiful to me. Like you care about this, whether you're feeling so happy about it you can't get the words out, or you're feeling so sad it's overwhelming to you. Like let's sit in the silence, and I'll just be so happy to see that you care. Like I just think it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So good. Do you have any final like things that you feel like have been unsaid about the Young Athena program?
Um,
If you
I
could
think
give advice, let me just channel blanket this
sure,
in something different. If you could give
sure.
advice to an Athena student, what advice would you give? And then anything left unsaid that comes out from that unfolding.
Sure. So I think my number one advice would be allow yourself time to get comfortable with introspection. Because I think what's beautiful about Athena is that you do teach us skills, but you also leave a lot of room for us to expound upon it. And the value of Athena for me was, yes, the classes, but then the time after to really consider and think about what I learned and to really see how that showed up in my life. So, my core values, I think about them all the time. And I have a lot of time, like I have two journals. I have a gratitude journal and then I have a normal journal. I would regularly say before Athena that I was scared to be alone with my own thoughts because I don't know what's going on in there. But the encouragement in Athena to be introspective was really hard for me to learn because it was really scary and uncomfortable. But then once you learn it and you're able to kind of sit and then you prioritize time to sit, it's the most valuable part of Athena other than the relationships because you're really not only taking what you learn in Athena and like learning that, but you're also how can I adapt this so many other places. So like me and my parents, I love my parents, we're tight. We had a core values talk the other day about like what their core values were, and I gave them a little exercise, and me and my mom got in a little bit of a disagreement, and she said, well, when you did this, this played on my core value of respect and I didn't feel seen. And I was like, oh, when you did that, that played on mine of not feeling cared for. And without that introspection, or like thinking about that conversation doesn't happen between me and my mom. Or my sister, whose number one core value is authenticity, there are some ways where me wanting to be in her space and be her older sister and care about her so fiercely makes her feel like she's being watched and she isn't allowed to be authentic, right? And so without having the conversations and the introspection to say, I actually know what this is. You're stepping on my core value care, and this is how this is showing up. Um, I just think it's so incredible. And then that introspection comes for all kinds of things, not just core values, but also relationships and how you want to show up in the world. So I would say, like, yes, take the classes, like, love the people and just give everything you have to it, but also be willing to take time outside to just like think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And introspection is a skill, as a lot of us were not
Mm-hmm.
taught. We were taught to manage the external experience, not the internal experience. I work with so
And
many
it feels,
women like my age, upper 30s, all the way through. I think the oldest person I've ever coached has been around 60. And it's all coming back to self, because so much of us has been taught to output and not to bring it back in. But the magic happens on the inside. And then the lives that you've changed because of the introspective work you did, right? Like teaching core values, since you're the core values teacher now, right?
yes.
Like how many lives have you touched through your core values conversation? Just like this example of your family. But I mean, like how many core values workshops have you taught now?
Oh gosh, like 5 or 6, I think.
Right. And like teaching,
Yeah.
bringing those people back to themselves. How does
Yeah.
that feel in your body? Like, how does that feel in your leadership and all of it?
It's good. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think also the most beautiful part of introspection within the Athena bubble too is like you probably don't even know this, but there's things that you said in the first cohort that I still think about all the time. And like I still find ways that they apply in my life and that other women have said. So in like the first cohort, we were talking about perfectionism and you said, and I could probably quote it from memory, you said, we're comparing ourselves to a scale of perfection that we didn't create. And so sometimes, even daily, I'll mess up and I'll be like, oh, I'm comparing myself to a scale of perfection I didn't even create. What would it look like for me to be perfect right now? And like that, just that, even that little tiny thought of introspection is like magical. And then being surrounded by women who like say things that make you think like that all the time is beautiful. And like that's just one example. There's like hundreds. And Kirtana gives me them all the time. Like I love her wisdom, but she was in my first cohort. I love her. But I just think it's magical. And like the ripple effect that Athena has had in my life is beautiful. And I just think I'm just so thankful for it.
Ugh. Well, I love you so much. And you know what just dawned on me is how me showing up for your graduation hit your care value,
Yes. Yes.
which I didn't even realize until we were having this conversation. And I was like, oh, like me showing up for you in that way, just like that had to be a complete experience. And for me it was hard because I was so stinking proud of you that I was like, oh, I'm not missing graduation like you and Nat. Oh, it was just like so, it was so good. You and Nat and Lauren, like what, all three of you all in one, like I can't even with myself, like what is happening. But yeah, so that was incredibly powerful, but it feeds, right, just the cycle, because now like when you have a mentor that shows up, then it's like, oh, how do I be the mentor that gives back in that way, right? So it's so powerful. So so incredibly grateful for you. Always will be, always have been. I am honored to witness your story and your journey and all of the magic that you're going to bring to the world. And I'm so stinking proud of you. I just can't say that enough. So,
Thank you.
love you big.
Love you.
And yeah, here's to the brightest future I could ever wish for you, because success is abundant, and you'll find whatever success you want. So, okay.